And we're live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining another high vibe conversation. I'm your host, Shel Shapiro, and these lovely ladies surrounding me are the high vibe women with heart. We are talking about single parenting today, and this is going to be a fun one, especially because I myself am not a parent, at least not to a human. Um, but yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes, and especially because I am not a parent, so to speak. At least not in the standard terms. I'm gonna let somebody else start today, and then we'll navigate from there. So I guess I'll go round robin. Jenny, what's coming up for you when we think of single parenting?
I knew you were going to ask me. And
Oh, thank you.
trust me, there are so many things coming up for me, especially as we have just experienced this pandemic. There have been so many situations where I have seen single parents, like in the store, for example. We are told to be shopping, solo, and we're told to keep distance, and kids are not always understanding those rules or standards. So I've seen so many single parents really just struggling through this pandemic, and I've also been one of them. Like when it all started, I could not even leave my kids in the car, and I have three little ones. So they would follow me like little ducklings. And it's just that respect and admiration for people who are doing their best when you have that experience of nothing is ever enough. I've been in so many situations when I feel like I can't succeed. If I leave my kids in the car, then I'm not helping them feel safe. And if I bring them in the store, then people will look at me, with their angry faces because they're running all over the place sometimes. And it's just that I love this expression that if you don't have the circumstances to succeed, you cannot fail. So I think that's what's coming up for me when I think about a single parent who's doing their best, that sometimes you get to be so compassionate with yourself and the situation that you're in, to see that in your way, you are succeeding. So I'll throw this to Stina. What's coming up for you, Stina?
I was thinking about single parenting from the perspective of like an economic disadvantage, I guess I would say. I feel like we have a lot of conversations about, or I should say, there's increasing conversations about marginalized groups and disadvantages and things that people are up against, whether it's your gender, your race, your sexual orientation, and just like economic status and class. There's all of these components that we're up against, and single parenting is one that doesn't get added to that list very often, of like very unique challenges and circumstances that affect every area of your life. And even if you are a single parent who's partnered, even if you are in a new relationship or even remarried, still the challenges of being a single parent can remain, because you don't always join with the other person as, say, an equal parent, with your own children. And that's okay, and it's normal. It's just that there can be this kind of assumption that goes along with that, oh, now at least you've got, your partner. It's like, well, they might have their own kids. They might have their own things going on. And there's just all of these nuances of, like Jenny was saying, how do you deal with situations where you're not supposed to have your kids with you? I had to cancel a doctor's appointment early on in the pandemic because I was going to have one of my children with me. And they said, oh, well, or I'm sorry, it was for one child and I was going to have the other child with me. And they said, well, we won't be able to see your child then. And I'm like, so I have a child that needs to go to the doctor and I can't go because I don't have childcare for my other child at that time. And so not only now do I have to figure out how to take off work and, make the appointment happen, I now have to find someone else who can also take my other child, and this is all while we're like virtual schooling at the same time. So, yeah, very unique challenges there. And then as I look to my kids going back to school in person, their school schedules are pretty wild. Like the way that schools are set up. I have one kid that'll start at about 7:30 in the morning. The other kid will start at about 8:45 in the morning. One of them will get out at 2:30 and the other one will get out at 4. Okay, so if you're a working parent, how does that work, right? And if you're a household with 2 working parents, you face the same challenges as a single parent who's working and trying to figure out, how do I even get both of my kids to school? And then if you're having to pay for like a before and after school program, those can run you $200 to $500 per child per month. So you're looking at an additional, say $1,000 a month just to get your kids to school. We're not even considering any extracurriculars, any other necessary appointments. When the heck are you supposed to grocery shop, cook dinner, like just keep up the bare, necessities. So that's kind of all on a logistical side of things. And then you have the challenges of the co-parenting relationship or parallel parenting relationship. And regardless to the connection you have with the parent of your children, whether that's your ex or not, the challenges that can present also can affect every area of your life. It can affect your mental and emotional health and your physical health and well-being and your ability to be present and patient with your children. And that's a relationship that you have to have legally if you are sharing custody of your children. And it's often one that you don't want to have or wouldn't choose again. So there's just so many complexities to being a parent, first and foremost, right? Just being a parent, just raising kids is a challenging journey and a learning experience every day. But then when you add to that, trying to do it all as one human, it can just feel impossible at times. Oh, and one more really quick little thing I'll add about the economic side of it was just like people don't think about, even if you have your kids half time, you have to have a home that accommodates those children. So you're going to be paying for a full family lifestyle, even though you are one person with your children half of the time. And so if you look at like what a living wage is considered, like I know in Michigan, I figured out for myself, it's roughly $80,000 a year to live on comfortably, to be able to pay for childcare, housing, healthcare, basic living expenses. That's not like taking trips to Disney World twice a year and having a boat and doing all the things. That's just having, a middle class, comfortable lifestyle where you have your needs met. And I think that we need to talk about those specifics and we need to talk about those numbers because it's quite daunting to look at. I need to pay $1,500 in rent a month as a single parent, where, if it was just me, I could get a studio apartment for $700 or whatever that, amount is. So there's some disproportionate challenges in that way as well.
Yeah, and Stina, you even had some crazy recommendations like, yeah, you could just leave your daughter out by the elevators. Like, what? So there was
I
some really
totally
crazy
forgot about
stuff.
that. You're so right. When that happened and I needed to bring the extra child to the appointment, that was the advice I got was, well, she could maybe wait outside of the office. And I'm like, this is a hospital. This is their main entrance for all of their offices, where you're suggesting I leave my, I think then 6-year-old, maybe 7, on a bench where there's public bathrooms, there's an elevator, and there's an exit. Within seconds, my child could be gone, and I would not know it. I was just appalled.
And it's a medical facility making this suggestion. It's like, oh, people, please think. The other thing we don't think about, if we don't have people in our world that are different from us or in different situations from us, is our privilege. And that's been something that's really been hitting home for me. And I had an inkling, very small inkling, of what it's like to be a single parent. I had a husband who was focused on work and clearing his desk. And it took years for him until he became a manager to realize that that's what you do to people. Get them to think that way. So yeah, I had a newborn and a 2-year-old, and I lived in Minnesota. And if you don't have your public sidewalk in front of the house shoveled by midnight, you get a fine. And he still wasn't home a lot of times by midnight. I had kids that were night owls. It wasn't just because daddy wasn't home and they were waiting for him. They're still like that. They're night owls. So just, to get them to bed was insane. So it was like all day with them, including it's 10 at night, they're still not in bed. It's 11 at night, okay, one down. It's 1 o'clock in the morning and the baby's still up. My saving grace was that they slept till 8:30 in the morning. Oh my gosh. Of course, my sleep was disturbed because then the husband was up again. So yeah. And then he traveled at one point. So, I was a single parent while he was gone. That is nothing in comparison to true single parenting. And it's, way more obvious now that I have friends in my life who are single parents. So that's what came up for me. And then even here, there was some gal who was upset with management at the apartment complex where I live. And I just jokingly said, oh, I just have Terry communicate with them, or I just have Terry. She was writing a letter and she goes, well, I don't have a Terry. Now we were both sort of on that joking level, but it just really hit me. It's like, ouch, what did you just say to her? Right? Where's your privilege? Are you aware of your privilege, Linda? So that was something I've been thinking about lately. And when we don't know what it's truly like for somebody else, we just don't have a level of compassion that we could have. And I know Jenny is so big on having people in her world that she's very different from. And it helps her to see and recognize who she is as a person. And I love her comment about where she ends. She gets to see where she ends and where they begin. And so I appreciate you guys, as you and Stina as single parents. I appreciate your teachings so much. So thank you. And then Shelley, you give us the awareness of single and having the niece and the nephew and doing the parenting as well. And yeah, we all really appreciate you as well.
Yeah, thank you. I I am sorry if my sister is listening. I love you. I am the best aunt, like if I do say so myself. But it's because I have that mothering instinct and I want to be a parent. And so when I get to, not that she doesn't, I'll say that right now. I'm not putting her down in any way, but for myself, I just have this need to look after younger children. I think probably like newborn to toddler age specifically like works really, really well for me. Because I can form this bond with them. And that's the age that my niece and my nephew are right now, not newborn necessarily, but like going on 2 and going on 4 at the moment. And they still have such a strong connection with me and vice versa, where I feel like I can teach them things and instill things in them that like they will take with them for the rest of their lives. And like it's a lot of mindful conversations with them to not traumatize them in ways that like yes, my brother and I grew up under the same roof and we do sometimes react in similar ways. We're very different from each other in the way that we take on the world and like our mindset, but like sometimes I have a tendency to like just snap at like my brother or a family member or even my niece and nephew, and I'm like, ooh, no, I should have approached it like this. And I'm very quick to like, how can I not necessarily undo what I just did, but like make sure that I don't do it again, so that I don't keep giving them that same negative behavior for them to like absorb. And I see similar things from my brother too, where like I'm like, all right, well, he's doing it this way, and I can show this other perspective. And so it's like giving them the best of both worlds, even not as their parent. Um, and I remember back to a previous relationship that I was in, where my partner had several children, and he did not co-parent well with those mothers in question. They had the children most of the time. And then occasionally he would be like, all right, let me watch them, or like, let me take them on. And they were of various ages. There were 3 of them at the time. But he was still like much older than me and like in a party mindset. And what would happen a lot was I would get left with the kids. He would invite them over and offer to watch them. And then he'd go out and have fun and leave me with the 3 kids, varying ages at the time from like 7 to 15. And so I'd be home for hours by myself, wanting to be out with him too, but also like realizing that I'm probably closer in age to the 15-year-old than I am to him, which was pretty scary because I was in my mid 20s. And like now I'm parenting somebody else's kids that he doesn't even want to be part of. And so I guess that's my closest experience to single parenting, but in a way that, yes, I loved those kids as if they were my own, but they weren't my own. They weren't mine. I just got thrown into it. And now I have all this responsibility of keeping them safe and feeding them and making sure they're taken care of and entertaining them and helping them with their schoolwork or helping them go to sleep and not have nightmares, again, because they ranged in age from like, again, 7 to 15, give or take a year or two. And it was just, all right, well, I wasn't prepared for this situation. Yes, I knew he had kids going into it, but I didn't expect to just have them, for lack of a better term, dumped on me. And the mothers certainly appreciated it once they knew that what was going on all the time. And I got along great with them, but it's just a weird thing to put yourself in that situation, especially when you're not necessarily ready or prepared for it. Not that you're ever really ready to become a parent, but like at least when they're your own kids, you know that you have taken on this responsibility, hopefully, willingly, and will do whatever is necessary for them. So that's 2 different angles that I've kind of like from the aunt perspective and from the relationship perspective, where I could say like I got a glimpse of what single parenting is like, and definitely the aunt perspective is the healthier version of that. And to what Jenny said earlier, yeah, my parents left us in the car all the time when they would go into the store. Sometimes, oh, we'll just be gone for a second. They'd roll the windows down. They'd leave the keys in the ignition, so that we could have the radio on. Not because we never even like were tempted to like try to drive or like turn the car on or anything, but like just to be able to have the radio or music on so that we wouldn't go crazy in the car. But a quick second or a few minutes would never just be a few minutes. They would always like, I think that would be their escape to try to like, all right, let me go have this shopping experience. Or I had a big mouth as a kid, and like I would ask probing questions probably at the not the right time. And so I probably got left in the car so that I wouldn't say the wrong thing if they were trying to negotiate a price or ask about something. Because I would definitely be that kid that was like, no, the price is this. Like, how come no, it was this over here. How come that's not true. And then they'd be like, no, shh, go over there. So yeah, I definitely got left in the car quite a bit. But so did my brother. It wasn't just me. Yeah, they did their best with what they knew how to do. And I don't know if I would parent the same way, but I guess we'll find out when I get there. Right. We all learn as we go. And I think that's the beauty of like having a supportive network around all of us these days, is that we're much more connected and to people where we can ask for help or like see what we could be doing, not necessarily what we should or need to be doing, but like if you have no idea how to tackle something, you could just look it up or ask somebody. Whereas back in the day, we were talking earlier about phone books, like you might not necessarily have a resource close by to ask for help or to get the answer that you need. And parents were more likely to like have to just figure it out on their own. And these days we really get to have support and help if we need it. So yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing. Thank you everybody for joining. I'm just like catching up on the comments right now. I'll pull Michael's back up from earlier.
Yeah, great comment, Michael. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Shell, what this is all boiling down to for me is that parenting is a choice. Because you can single parent without biological kids. You can single parent in a marriage, you know?
And you can parent the partner or the parent. So that perspective too.
And I remember from my experience that I realized at the end that it's better to set myself apart than to be waiting for someone who doesn't show up.
Ooh, yeah, I love that.
So I guess parenting is a choice.
Yeah, man. Stina, you want to give us your teaching on overparent, underparent?
Oh my God. It's in the book.
She's like, wait, that's old energy. Just go read my book.
Well, it's just the idea that sometimes you end up parenting the other parent so that they can parent the children. And so then, Linda was describing kind of how, her husband was gone a lot. And I think it's just important to remember that regardless to your relationship status and regardless to the biology of your children and who they quote unquote belong to, you can, like Jenny said, how you parent is a choice. And it's also can be a result of circumstances completely outside of your control, which could be how the other parent shows up, and not to forget that some people end up being a single parent because their other parent dies, like they're not there at all, or because you have been abandoned in some way. Like there's more ways than just divorce that you end up as a single parent. And those factors can really play into how parenting works out for you as well. I know when Bindu Babu was on with us, I said that something she had shared with me was really powerful, was your children only need one parent. And that frame helped me to not concern myself with how my children were going to be parented when they were with their dad, and to just focus on me, because I can only control me and I only need to control me. And not that I was trying to control, but anytime you are worried about or anxious about something, it's because you can't control it. So putting all that energy in is just, it's just energy that I then don't have for myself or for my kids. So I think that, just to remember that every parenting dynamic is unique. Every parenting journey is unique. And just because you are partnered or not partnered, there's no givens, right? So you can very much feel alone in your parenting and feel like a single parent, even though you are married to the parent of your children. That can still be a very real experience. So I think we can all learn from each other and how we manage that. And I think what Jenny said was beautiful, that choosing to set herself apart felt better than waiting for somebody else to show up. And sometimes that's the healthiest thing that we can do, is just to say, I am the parent that I can control, and this is how I'm going to do my best for my kids. And that goes along with the comment that Michael left as well.
Yeah, that's great. And my mom and I would pretty much raise the kids the same way. They were at her house, kind of the same thing. However, their dad was like, let them use matches. And my mom and I were like, no freaking way. So my mom came up with that's what your dad lets you do. That's not what I let you do, or that's not what your mom and I let you do. And that seemed to satisfy the kids pretty well too.
I read in a parenting book pretty early on some verbiage around saying things like that, to say like, we don't, or in our house we don't, and to make it like very inclusive of like, this is just how we do things here. And then it's like, it's not a judgment on what someone else is doing. It's just, this is how we do things here. We don't do that. Or here we all clean up after dinner, or whatever kind of your routines and things like that are. And I think it's very healthy to be as neutral as possible about other circumstances, other parents, because unless you're actually concerned for their health, their safety, their well-being, it's a matter of parenting style, as much as you may or may not like it. As much as it may impact you, like you've got what you've got to work with, you've got to do your best, and ultimately this is your child's journey through their life, and you won't be able to control every aspect of it, and you won't be able to control every adult that impacts them, for better or for worse.
Right. And my mom could have used that one, but then what about me? I'm in the same household. So then what's your suggestion there when you're a married couple and he lets them do this and you don't? Easy.
I didn't run into that personally. I don't have a lot of experience with that. Typically, like now I guess there are some instances where I'm just like, I was raised to be very paranoid about everything that could be dangerous in the world. I can tell you every way you could get hurt and die from anything.
I can tell you, take you to the health food store and tell you how you could die. So yeah.
Oh my gosh. And so my partner, I grew up very careful about everything. And my fiance now, my kids will beg him to tell them stories, because he has these wild and crazy, ridiculous stories from his childhood and teenage years of things he lit on fire, things he crashed, things he ruined, stunts he pulled with his friends, and they just eat it up. They just love it. And so there's things that he's okay with and I'm not okay with. And I will say that he actually will proactively tell them, now, I told you could fill in the blank, eat this candy. Your mom didn't. So if there's problems, they're my problems, not her problems, kind of a thing, which I appreciate very much.
Yeah.
So I think that we can do that proactively ourselves too, to say, these are the consequences I'm comfortable being responsible for. So while I'm in charge, this is what we're going to do. And if, your dad or your mom is comfortable with these other consequences and they're comfortable dealing with them, then that's fine. If you're not a united front, don't pretend that you're a united front. Kids can handle there being different rules. And I think it's actually really healthy and important for them to learn that. Because as adults, we do that. Like, you act different in your living room with your friends than you do in a board meeting, than you do in an interview for a podcast, than you do, out at dinner. Like, we act differently. We understand that there are different quote unquote rules to our behavior. And so, don't underestimate your kids. They can handle things being different, but just treat it as it's just different. It's not right or wrong.
Yeah, that's a great point, Stina.
Yeah. And I was going to say another thing that was coming up for me is that single parenting really challenges a lot of gender norms and gender roles that we have. Because when you're the single parent, you really learn to parent, not just to be a mother or a father, because you can't depend on somebody else to like do the other half, for lack of a better way to put it. Like, historically, you'd have the mom who fulfills this nurturing role and she does these things, and you have the man that fulfills this role. And I think culturally we're moving away from those gender roles and norms anyways, and we're looking at things from a more holistic perspective in parenting. It's just highlighted and like emphasized when you're literally the only one, and the only one that you can depend on. You start to think about parenting as a whole, what your kids need from a parent, not just how do my kids need to be mothered. And I think that's going to create really much healthier psyches for our kids who are getting a really strong foundation of parenting. Because I look at parenting as I'm just raising little parents. That's my job. I'm training up little parents. They're not children that I am parenting. Like, I am parenting little parents because they are going to go on to parent themselves and to parent other people.
Yeah. And that's how I was with my kids. It's like, what is this going to look like in a grown body? What is this going to look like as an adult? What is this going to look like as a parent? Right. Yeah. And so, because my kids were challenging, so it was always pick your battles. So what was I going to zero in on? And I'm very much of like, yeah, if I clean up this one thing, if I change this one thing, whatever the word would be, then 6 other things will automatically clear up, take care of themselves. So I was very much that way when I was working with parents of kids, with various labels, biochemically pulling them out of those labels. Okay, if we do this one thing, then here's 6 other things that'll just clean up on their own. And it worked really, really well. Parents don't have a lot of time. So what's that one thing you can do that takes care of like 6 other things?
I love that from a like a bare bones, like how to take control of your time and like value your time and value other people's time too perspective. Also, like I the words are stuck. They're like right there. They're right there. I can taste them. Major kudos to like all the parents out there that have chosen and to do it on their own from the beginning, whether because they can't have kids of their own, they don't have a partner to go through the process with, whether they adopt, like whatever. There are some parents out there and people that are looking to go through the process because they really just want to be a parent, and they are making the choice to go at it alone and take on that extra responsibility, knowing full well that there is no one else to help them in that immediate situation. And somebody may come along, somebody may not, but like they are making that choice right then and there, like that this is what I'm going to do, and it doesn't matter if I have help or not. Like this is how I'm going to proceed with my life because it's something that's important to me. And I think that's like such a beautiful thing. And like we know that it's going to be exponentially harder right out the gate because of all the other external factors. So just major kudos to like anyone who's a parent, whether you're a single parent or not, because it's hard work, and it is a job. It is a full-time job in addition to everything else that we do on a daily basis. So yeah.
Something that's coming up for me that's relating to what well, all of you have shared of the struggles is that single parenting to me has been so much about letting go and recognizing, going back to what you shared, Linda, where I end and where my kids begin, because I so deeply want them to be safe. And I'm not always, being in service, in best service to them when I'm fixing things for them before they break and before they happen. And when you're on your own with them, those situations are just like, they are there. No one else is filling in for you.
Yeah, the last thing you need is one more thing going wrong too. You're just protecting yourself.
Well, like when you end. Like I like this image of sometimes if I think of my children as plants, sometimes I feel like I just want to keep them safe. I want to put them in my window and I just want to water them. I don't want any wind or any rain or any weather to affect them. But truth is, like, a tree that is put in my window is not going to grow strong. The trees that are out in the real world, who is facing the reality of things and natural consequences, grow strong, right?
Yeah.
So when I've been reframing and realizing that letting my kids go to play the leading role in their own lives, that's caring for them. That's being responsible. That's loving on them from a distance. And it's really the highest respect that I can pay them.
Oof. Well said. Not me. Right, Shell?
Yeah. It's making me more excited for parenthood.
Aww.
It didn't scare me away. Don't worry. It's making me want it even more.
Nice.
So yeah.
Something that so real quick, you had said you had said like it's single parenting's harder. It's like maybe not. Like it takes a lot of energy. However, if you have someone else in your life, that other person is taking a lot of energy. And if things aren't working well with that partner, it takes even more energy. So then to, blah, blah, right? So when it's just you and it's just your, for lack of better words, rules and the way we do things here and all of that, you have so much energy left over than when you're dealing with other kids or a spouse or a partner or whatever. So, probably just, in a way balances out. And you right from the get-go, you're gonna do things differently. It's when all of a sudden you don't have that spouse, or sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, or like Stina said, like COVID hits, now what, right? So having your support systems in place, ready for basically anything, and then you've got then that extra energy that again, in a way, you're more privileged than the person who's single parenting within a marriage, or who had to go through all the angst of divorce to, then becomes the single parent. So yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah,
that's cool.
I would say from my experience, it doesn't necessarily make the parenting harder. So the parenting might be a little bit easier in that way. I do think it just makes life harder, like on a daily basis. I think Jenny can probably speak to it or agree that if your kid is sick, you have to take off work 100% of the time instead of half of the time. if there's just certain needs that other people can't always meet. Like, you could be tired at the end of the day, you still have to put the kids to bed, you still have to figure out dinner. There's not always support available, or there's not always the resources. Like, you don't always have the money to pay a sitter or to pay for takeout. And so there's just logistical things like that. In a perfect ideal world, I think, and I noticed this even when I was a part of a church where there were a lot of families and a fewer number of single people. And like, I always really wanted to like be friends with the single people. Like, I wanted them to come over for dinner and like be friends with our family. I didn't feel this divide of, well, you're over there in the singles group and then we're the families. Like, I really wanted to see a community where like the single people were plugged into the families, and especially single, moms or parents. Like, there is more capacity to be shared in a community when you can help each other out. Even when I was still married, I had a friend that would do a kid swap with me. So one day a week I'd take her kid, another day of the week she took my kids. I had 2 kids, she had 1, and she was like, I don't care, I get the day free and then you get the day free. Like, your kids are great, it's fine. It wasn't a numbers game, it wasn't who owes who more. None of that. It was just, this is how I'm going to help you out, and this is how you're going to help me out, and we're both going to be better for it. And like, that, I think, is the beauty of having that support and the community that you can actually rely on and that you can actually get that support from. So,
yeah. I'll also share that part of me not being tied down at the moment, like, I don't have a ring on my finger. I'm about to bounce around the country. Like, I don't have any children of my own, but that frees me up, and it's always freed me up a little bit to be able to jump in and help my friends who have kids, to be a better aunt. And I'm Aunt Shell no matter where I go, no matter whose house I'm in. Okay, you need a break from your kid? Cool. Let me read them a bedtime story. Let me help with bath time. Let me put them down for like a nap or play outside or go for a walk or whatever it is. And or run over and babysit, like, in a pinch. Like, because I don't have those other attachments, I am able to help more, and I love that just as much as if they were my own too. So I am part of that support that other parents can call on. So I understand what you're talking about, Stina, from the other perspective of giving the help and being there to support.
I was always the kid in the neighborhood who would go knocking on the door after dinner going, do you need any help with your kids? And they'd just look at me like, are you nuts? Or they'd be like, oh, well, they're in the tub. And it's like, do you want me to finish their bath and put them to bed? And they're just looking at me like, are you nuts? Like, that's what I love to do.
now that's smart marketing. Show up at the door after dinner. You are going to get my business.
You bet. I always
kids put themselves to bed. Yeah.
Sold potato chips from the top step of the busy street. Potato chips, 5 cents at age 3. But thank you for recognizing. Good point.
And something that's coming up for me is how we do adjust to the situation that we're in. And I'm really saying this to any parent who is, looking at maybe single parenting being the better option. Because I remember, for example, when I had 1 child, I looked at parents having multiple childs, thinking like, how do they do it? Like, I'm barely surviving with 1 and don't always feel good enough. So how are they, being there for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5? I mean, and then I realized that once I had 3, well, I had 3 at once. It's like, I wasn't the same person, we get to trust the process, and we do evolve with the task that we set out for. So I just have tremendous amount of faith in parents in general. And when I was, I know in a place in my life when I was feeling not good enough, my therapist at the time looked at me and she asked, well, do you love your kids? And I said, yes, I love them. And she asked, well, do they know that you love them? Yes, they do. Well, that's enough. And it just, at the place where I was right then, it just, yeah. That was very healing.
That's so nice. Yeah. I would like to give a shout out to Jenny. Her journey, having a 1.5-year-old, having premature twins, having an unsupportive spouse. Oh my gosh, your journey, Jenny. Then when you did get divorced, you didn't have a car, and you're in the winter of Sweden, all the seasons of Sweden, and you've got a box bike. You've got this bike with this big thing on it where your kids sat, and you bicycled them to school and you to work, and I just want to give you the kudos and the honor. And you've been through so much, and like you said, you change, right? You just adapt. And it was such a cute story in your book, Choosing Unity, where you like taught the kids to basically get along in the box bike. Can you address that real quick? Do you remember what you actually said to them? Do you remember that part from your book?
Well, I remember waking up to whatever weather we were dealing with. I mean, blisters or rain, heavy rain, and it was just this it's up to us. It's just a choice. Like, how do we want this ride to be?
Yeah.
And it turned into this great opportunity for all of us to learn to manage our moods and care for one another.
Yeah.
And those rides that, in my mind, I was thinking like, oh my goodness, this is going to be so terrible. But then they really, they did their part, and I allowed them to do their part. And now they are asking for the bike. I mean, we have the comfort of a car, and they're asking for it, and they really missed that time because it was such
you donated the bike, and they're like, oh, yeah. Where's our bike?
Yes.
Well, it's with another family who needs it right now.
Yes. Well, it's a sweet memory for sure, and a really good opportunity for them to grow through the friction that we were dealing with at the time.
Yeah.
You could write the cutest children's book, by the way, called Bye Bye Bike. And it's a story of putting your kids in this bike and all learning to get along and then donating it to another family at the end.
Oh, I love it, Nina.
Coming up.
Next book. I love it.
I do have a children's book author coming on with me on Monday, so maybe she can help you write that story. Yeah. Oh my God, such a great single parenting conversation today. We touched on so many aspects of it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in wherever in the world you are joining from. All the amazing comments. Stay tuned next week for another high vibe conversation. We've got a pretty sweet guest coming on with us, right? So everybody, you won't want to miss it. This has been another high vibe conversation with High Vibe Women with Heart. This is us saying bye for now.